Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to my channel. Do you ever find yourself completely obsessed with a single product and want to use it on every card you make? Well, that's exactly where I am right now. I just can't get enough of that Textured Tiles 3D embossing folder by Altenew. Today, I'll be sharing two different card projects featuring this gorgeous background. Well, I'm stepping a little out of my comfort zone and bringing in several techniques together. We have stamping, die cutting, embossing, ink blending, you name it, all while staying true to my clean and simple style. This video is part of a YouTube hop, and the theme for this hop is out of my comfort zone. A few of us crafty friends are sharing projects that are completely different from our usual card making style, pushing ourselves to try something new and exciting. I'll have links to all the other participants and their videos down in the description box below, so be sure to check them out for even more creative inspiration. Let's start by taking a look at this absolutely gorgeous textured tiles 3D embossing folder. Now, this folder creates a realistic brick-like texture that adds incredible depth and dimension to your card fronts. If you look closely, you'll notice that each brick has a slightly different design, and the raised pattern perfectly mimics the rugged charm of a brick wall, making it an ideal backdrop for any floral card design. For today's cards, I'll keep the overall design very clean and simple. I'll be embossing two panels, one in white and one in black cardstock for my backgrounds. Let's begin with the white panel. This one measures 4 by 5 and quarter inches. I lightly misted it with water before running it through my die cutting machine. This will help soften the paper fibers and prevent any cracking when embossed. Just take a closer look at how gorgeous this design is. You could definitely add some beautiful ink blending to highlight the texture and patterns even more. But since I wanted to step a little bit out of my comfort zone, I decided to leave it as is. No ink blending, no coloring, no splatters. Now, the main idea behind both the cards today was to create a framed floral element over this beautiful brick background. For the first card, I'm using the Elegant Blossoms Branch die by Simon System. I absolutely love this floral. It's a single die that cuts out that delicate stem with leaves, four petal layers, and a flower center, allowing you to create a beautifully layered floral sprig. You can definitely use colored cardstock for each of those die cut layers, but I prefer cutting mine from plain white cardstock, especially since everything comes in that one die, and then adding colors with inks. Now, once my die cuts were ready, I placed them on my ultra sticky mat by Altenew. This helps keep all the tiny little pieces in place while I ink blend, especially since they are quite delicate and I don't want any tearing or cracking of the paper. As far as colors are concerned, I went with the traditional greens and browns for the leaves and stem, using mocha and cappuccino for the stems and field and pine for the leaves. All of these inks are the Simon Says Positively Saturated inks. Now, normally I would go for pinks, soft pinks for my flowers, but this time I wanted a warm teal shade for which I used color Surf. I felt that it would complement beautifully with that earthy brick background without overpowering it, and it would be a change from the usual pinks and purples that I use for my florals. Now, for adding ink on the flower petals, I started by adding just a light touch of color at the very center of each of those petals, and then using a soft flicking motion, I pulled the ink outwards towards the edge. This technique creates a really gentle gradient where the color is most concentrated at the center and gradually fades out to almost white at the tips of the petals. It gives the flowers a soft, airy look that feels very natural and elegant. To do this, I used my mini ink blending brushes, which works perfectly for those small die cut pieces like these. They let me have much more control of how much color I'm adding and exactly where I want it to be. For the flower centers, I wanted to bring in a little contrast and brightness, so I went with the shade Citrine, a cheerful sunny yellow that brings the whole flower to life. Once all of my die cut pieces were inked and dried, I carefully assembled the flowers by layering each of those petals over the other and adhering them together using liquid glue. I love how that slight variation in the ink blending adds depth to each layer, making the finished blooms look soft and dimensional, almost like a real pressed flower. Before adding my frame onto this panel, I wanted to make sure that my floral arrangement would fit perfectly on the card front. This step also helps me determine exactly what size frame I'll need for the design. And I absolutely love how this looks. That beautiful teal, I feel, really pops against this white background. Well, if you wanted, you could also add a hint of color on your background to make that floral element pop. Now for this card, I'll be using the Illuminated Scenes die set, which includes these beautiful decorative frames along with some coordinating sentiments that match perfectly with this Illuminated Scenes stamp set. Now, in one of my previous videos, I had already die cut a few of these frames and even embossed them using the coordinating embossing folder. So I decided to use one of the leftovers today. I will leave a link to that video down in the description box below. Now, this particular one is an absolutely stunning gold frame from using the gold paper by Your Paper Insider. The embossing gives it such a rich, detailed texture that adds a touch of elegance to the whole card. Since I only wanted to highlight my floral element and not the entire background, I decided to go with a smaller frame this time. This helps draw the focus right to the flowers while still letting that beautiful brick texture show through around it. Before adhering everything down, I just double checked that my floral element fit nicely within the frame. Once I was happy with the positioning, I attached the stem to the background using liquid glue, and you'll notice that I intentionally let the bottom of the stem extend slightly outside the frame. That little detail helps create a more natural, dimensional look, almost as if the floral sprig is growing right out of that frame itself. At this point, I decided to make a little change. Now, instead of aligning the frame straight with the background, I tilted it just slightly, and I have to say, I really love how that small shift added a touch of visual interest to the overall design. It's not something I usually do, but this simple tilt really helped draw the eye towards the floral focal point and made the composition feel more dynamic. I adhere the frame onto my 3D texture embossed background using liquid glue. Because the background is quite dimensional, I always make sure to press down gently for a few seconds so the glue gets good contact with those raised areas. Adhering elements on a heavily textured surface can sometimes be a little tricky, but using a strong liquid glue adhesive usually does the job perfectly. Next, I added thin foam tape behind the flowers to give them just a subtle bit of lift. From my experience, foam tape works much better than tape runners or even liquid glue when you're attaching die cuts to embossed or textured panels. It not only helps them stay in place securely, but also adds that lovely dimension to your focal point, making it stand out beautifully against the background. Well, I'm absolutely in love with how that beautiful teal petals look against the brick texture of the background. That soft gradient of surf fading from the center to those outside of the petal with nearly white petal tips gives the flower such a delicate, airy feel. Pairing them up with the deep greens and browns of the leaves and stem adds a really natural, grounded contrast. It's such a subtle contrast, but super elegant. With the flowers popped up, the combination of textures, we have brick embossing, shimmer from the gold frame, and the soft floral. Everything gives the card a beautiful layered look without feeling busy. Next, it was time to choose a sentiment for my card front, and for that, I reached out for one of my absolute favorites, the Always and Forever BetterPress Sentiments by Spellbinders. I just love this collection because it includes such a beautiful variety of sentiments that work perfectly with so many different occasions. What I especially love about this set is that it comes with a coordinating die that cuts out all the sentiments in one go. For today's card, I decided to use a simple and sweet one which says, Hello, sweet friend. To help it blend beautifully with the rest of the design, I added just a hint of teal ink over the sentiment. I didn't add any fresh ink, I simply used the leftover color that was already on my blending brush. This subtle touch of color helps tie everything together. I absolutely love how the color on my sentiment strip complements with the shades in my flowers. It's such a subtle but effective way to tie the card together. I decided to place a sentiment strip on the lower left hand corner. Since this is a long strip, I positioned it towards the corner and will trim off one end with scissors to make it fit perfectly. Now, to adhere the sentiment, I used foam tape which pops it up to match the exact height of our floral image. This way, it's not just the colors that coordinate but also the dimension, which helps bring the entire design together in a balanced and visually pleasing way. I like to add a tiny bit of liquid glue on top of the foam tape for extra security. Before pressing it down completely, I like to use my T-square ruler to double check that sentiment strip is perfectly aligned on the card front. The liquid glue will give me that wiggle room before I commit the sentiment onto the card front. Taking this extra step ensures a clean, professional looking finish and keeps everything neatly in place. Now that our card front panel is complete, all that is left to do is assemble it onto an A2 size card base. Now, because I used thin foam tape for the flowers and sentiment, I decided to add a little extra foam tape behind the panel to give it a subtle lift and ensure that it stands out nicely from the base. And for just a touch of extra magic, I used my glitter brush pen to add a soft sparkle to the leaves and flowers. It's such a subtle effect, but it catches the light beautifully and really elevates the design without overpowering the clean and simple aesthetic. And well, there you have it, a clean and simple card with a beautiful textured brick background, a softly ink blended floral focal point, and coordinating sentiment. I love how the dimension, colors, and subtle sparkle all come together to create a polished, elegant design. This card is simple yet full of detail and personality, perfect for sending to a special friend. Now, it was at this point that I knew that I had to use this beautiful background panel and the overall design for another card. So I went on to create my second card. For card number two, I'll keep the basic design the same. We have the textured embossed background, a framed floral focal point, and a letterpress sentiment, but with a few subtle changes to give it a fresh look. This time I'm starting with a black cardstock panel for my background, which is something I don't usually use, but trust me, once you see the finished card, you are going to fall in love with it. I began by cutting an A2 size black cardstock panel using A2 postage rectangle die by Simon's Stamp. I absolutely love the little postage style edges on all four sides. It adds such a delicate finished touch to our panel. Next, I place this panel into my textured tiled embossing folder. Well, just like I did before, I sprayed this panel with a light mist of water just to soften the fibers. Now, this is a heavyweight black cardstock, so I had to make sure that this paper does not crack. I ran the sandwich through my die cutting machine and just take a closer look at this embossed panel. I think it's even more striking than the white panel that we used on card number one. The deep black really makes the texture pop and gives the card that bold, elegant feel. For this card, I used the last remaining smaller frame, and I have to say, I absolutely love the gold cardstock I chose. Against that bold black background, the gold really pops and adds a touch of elegance that I just can't get enough of. Now, for the floral element, I'm using the magnificent Magnolia dies. I adore this die set. The flowers have that absolutely wonderful keyhole mechanism that makes it so much more easier to layer each petal perfectly, creating a beautiful dimensional floral arrangement. There are four flowers in the set, but for this smaller frame, I'm using just two. To save time, I already cut, ink blended, and assembled the flowers. I used the same surf shade for the petals and citrine for the flower centers, just like we did for card number one, so that the colors tie the two cards beautifully together. Now, once everything was ready, I attached the frame to the textured black background using liquid glue. Then, just like I did for card number one, I used foam tape to pop up the flowers, giving them that perfect lift and dimension against the bold backdrop. I also love how the soft teal looks against that black background. It really stands out beautifully without being too harsh. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What other colors would you pair with black? Do you have any favorite color combinations that work well on black card base? Personally, I usually stick to white backgrounds, so picking colors that work with white feels pretty straightforward to me. But when it comes to black, I'll admit it can get a little bit tricky. That's why I'm so happy that this soft teal shade turned out exactly how I imagined. It really complements the bold black while keeping the card elegant and balanced. For this card, I decided to turn it into a Get Well Soon card, so I chose one of the BetterPress sentiment strips that says Feel Better Soon. I trimmed the flagged edges on both sides so it would fit perfectly, overlapping the frame and the background just slightly. Then I added a subtle hint of teal on the sentiment strip to tie all the colors together. Now, all that's left to do is assemble the card front. I popped the panel onto a white top folding A2 size card base using foam tape for some extra dimension, just like we did on card number 1. Finally, I added a touch of sparkle to the flowers with my glitter brush pen, just a little shimmer to catch the light and give the card that polished and finished look. And just like that, card number 2 is also complete. I absolutely love how this turned out. Using black cardstock for the background was a bold choice, but it really made the design pop and gave the card such an elegant, striking look. Well, I'm thrilled with how both the cards turned out, but if I had to pick a personal favorite, I would definitely go for the black one. The combination of gold, black, and teal is so unexpected for me, yet it works beautifully. Stepping out of my comfort zone really paid off. I am so happy with how stunning this card has become. I hope this video inspires you to step out of your comfort zone and try something new in your own card making. All the supplies I used today are listed in the description box below, so you can easily find everything and recreate these cards for yourself. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.